Alrighty, thanks for tuning in, guys. We're going to get straight into it today. A little bit of a mix-up. I'm going to be kind of interviewing Yo, the owner of Big Five Fitness. And I just wanted to chat to you, Yo, a little bit more about kind of your experience of how you got into the fitness industry and how Big Five started.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of a long story. If you want to go back to, because the reason I'm doing it now is because I got back into fitness, right? So, which is a long time ago now as well. But I was always into, I played ice hockey back in Sweden. No, I wasn't gonna. I can't say my whole life because I did it from 7 or 8 till I was 27. So, but about 20 years I played ice hockey. Uh, the reason I'm telling you this is because it's part of the story why I got back into fitness, right? So
Yeah.
I was always fit. Nutrition wasn't a thing back then. Like none of the trainers really knew. So I was super fit, but I didn't really like look the part either. Coming back to that later, but I was like basically fitness doesn't have to be looks, or aesthetics, right? But so what I did was I get to 27. I was sick of ice hockey. I went traveling like again. I had been traveling off and on, but I went traveling again, and I just quit. I started playing something called floorball, which is a Swedish sort of indoor hockey thing, not on ice anymore. And but I just got out of it, and I started. Well, I kept eating the way I'd been eating, but from going training 6-7 days a week, I just kept eating the same crap, which was basically my diet was bread with anything. Like there was like toasted sandwiches, fresh sandwiches.
Young athlete food.
What's that?
Typical of a young athlete, just lots of carbs. And
Yeah. Look, I had pizza at least once a week, I think, and it was pasta every other day, of some form. So basically kept eating it. But the problem is I started probably drinking a lot more as well, like thinking, I don't need to be as fresh. It wasn't that I hadn't been drinking before that, but it was just like crept into the weeks and, got lazy with it. The way it crept up on me, I didn't really know. Like, I didn't really know that. Anyway, so we moved to Australia, and 6 months in here, I got into the whole, like, Australia is really easy, or it was then, to eat cheap crap food. Like, there's yellow food everywhere. Like, you don't get that in Swedish service stations when you go traveling. You go in and there's hot, deep fried stuff everywhere, right? And it was cheap. My local pub here in Yarraville, it was then called the Blarney Stone, right? And it was like, for example, Locals Tuesday it was $6.50 meals, right? So you get a Palmer for $6.50.
yeah.
And I was like in heaven thinking you
Comes
could,
with beer as well.
well, didn't, but for less than $10, you had a beer, a Palmer and a pot, which was ridiculous to me because in Sweden, eating out was expensive. It was sort of like a luxury thing. So then my weight crept up even more. So 6 months in, I'm going to try and speed this up so it's not too boring. But 6 months in, I had my dad out here for the first time. He's been out here every year or every second year since, but that was the first visit. And we went to the beach, as we do as Swedes, my first summer in Melbourne. And my dad obviously snapped a lot of photos. And afterwards, we looked at photos, and I saw a photo of myself on the beach. And I remember the day thinking, I didn't think I looked that bad. I didn't think, and fitness isn't about looks. You don't like, no one really look like the fitness models that we see. That's not how we all look, fitness professionals. It doesn't work. Most people don't look like that. But I didn't look the way I thought I looked. I didn't realize that I had gained so much weight and was so unfit and unhealthy, right? So I saw the photo, and that was sort of a turning point. It sounds like a little bit of a cliche, but it was literally that photo that made me go, jeepers, what have I done to myself? Like, what is this? So that made me go, I need to lose some weight. I went home, weighed myself for the first, like I'd never really weighed myself. But I weighed myself, and I remember the scales were tipping almost over, which doesn't maybe for some people sound that much, but it was 99.7 kilos, and I was getting really close to that 3-figure, and I just went, nah, not doing this anymore. So I just started, I'd started working at this company in IT 6 months earlier, and a couple of the guys there went like, hey, why? There's a boxing gym around the corner. Does anyone want to start? And I just sort of went, yeah, it'd be a good way to meet people and try to get that weight off. I got into it. I got really into it, and my sort of competitive side crept back in, and when I do something properly, I do it properly. So I just went really hard. Trained, my nutrition changed. I got tracking, and not tracking, but more like strict with my meals, and it was healthy. I wouldn't touch anything.
Awareness, yeah.
Yeah, like in the office, they kept coming out with sweets and treats and all that from all these meetings. Everyone in IT was like seagulls on it. But I was like, nah, I'm on a mission now. I'm not touching this stuff, right? So it was just, it kept, and when I saw the scales like dropping, I dropped 7 kilos, I remember, really quickly. And that made me like motivated to keep going. And then obviously go slower after that. But I was training really hard, really. I remember the first time at the boxing gym, the mate who said, let's go to this boxing gym, he did 1 session, he threw up and never came back. And I just kept going for 3 more years or something like that with another mate. Anyway, so the fitness came back, and my wife saw that I was a little bit bored with IT as I was working with them. And when I say a little bit bored, I hated it. Like I didn't want to go to work. Every like Saturday night, I had Monday-itis because I knew that the day after was Sunday, which was getting closer to Monday. That's how I was feeling about my job. It was a great job, don't get me wrong, it's a great job, but it wasn't for me. I'd done it for 15 years, but it wasn't for me. And so this is a long story, isn't it? But I'll trying to tell the whole part, right? So I went to, I went home and I spoke to my wife. So she worked at a TAFE then, and they had this fitness course there, like certificate 3 and 4 in fitness. So she suggested I do it, and I did it. Started doing that at nighttime, just studying, went into school 1 night a week, and got into it. And during that, I just went, maybe I can do this. So I started like planning for a start of it, which basically I started my first boot camp with people from the company I worked at. And it was like the day after I got my certificate, I ran my first session with about 8 people, right? And I just did it. I didn't know where it was going to take me, but I got into it. I was fit. I was getting people fit. I was loving it. And then eventually I thought I need to take this a step further. And I started looking for a place. I looked and looked and looked and looked to try and find a good rental space. And I found one open up, and I ran that for, it was probably, I can't even remember. I sort of lost track, but I worked for, I basically opened the gym the same month my first child, my daughter was born. And I did run the gym working full-time in IT for about 2 years, I think, before I decided to take the whole punt and go in fully to it. I didn't go fully to it. I started, actually, I did take 6 months off work.
Yeah.
I had a bit of like a security to go back to if I needed, but it went well, and I did decide to leave, and that's how it started, which is now, that was 2013, so 7 years ago. About that, yeah. That's my path into the fitness industry, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And obviously Big Five has changed a lot since those first days of out in the park, and then the progression through to Wembley Ave, and now to where we are now. Was that kind of all planned, or was that something you did on the fly? Did you have a vision for Big Five when you first opened up?
No. No. Look, having had business coaches, etc. After that, I didn't have any business coaches then. Everyone said you had to have a business plan. I didn't. I just really, because I couldn't be bothered writing one. Like it, I wasn't interested in it. I just went in. The boot camp was just like, I'll do that on the side to learn. I actually don't even remember if I had a plan with it at the time. I just thought if I can open up something on the side, it's a bit of fun, and then blah, blah, blah. And no, there was no real vision until I started training people in the gym, when I realized, hey, this is how you're meant to train people. And this is like, this is what I like to do. And I realized that resistance training, etc. and that came. So then I started building the vision, or building the idea of what Big Five is now, which is where we have the 2 different programs, etc., which I couldn't fit in my first gym. So we just trained one style.
Hybrid.
Yes. Yeah.
There was kind of one point that stood out in that story for me, and it's something that we still probably have a lot of people or our members struggle with, is they do that first session, they throw up, they pull up really sore, and then they never come back. In hindsight, what would you have said to your friend that next time when he never come back in those days?
Well, in hindsight, to be honest, what I learned from it, and I don't know if we haven't 100% succeeded with it. I guess we've rarely had anyone throw up. It's been a couple of times maybe, and I see that as a failure, because I just saw that he never went back to the boxing gym, right? And that's a fail from the gym, right? I'm not like the guy, brilliant boxing trainer, the guy that I was with, and but we don't want to get someone in who is like probably thought about it for months and months. Should I take the step? And then make them feel so bad that they don't want to come back. So that I learned that we don't want to do that. It has happened a few times, but usually it's not because we push people too hard. It's usually because someone is competitive. They might have been a real athlete before, and then they come in and think that they still got it, and they drank too much water, and a little bit of water comes up. I have to point out, no one has actually spewed in the gym, so no one has to worry about the cleanliness of the floor. They walked outside.
What about soreness? I know that's probably something a lot of people struggle with, is they pull up really sore in that first week and they're not sure whether they should come back the next session. Would you recommend training the day after, or?
I would move the day after for sure. I would. We always say it. Come in tomorrow. Don't go full on. Rest when you need, but move it. Get moving. Even if you can't come in, if you feel like it's too sore to come in, you go. Like I know, I still get that soreness. I had it from Monday this week, but I knew that when I started moving the next day, it's going to loosen up, and then it loosens up. So blood flow obviously helped with recovery. I have had people being so sore that they never came back, and that's a fail from my behalf as well. Sometimes I also, like that soreness, I had one guy say, "Oh, I'm so sore I can't walk down the stairs. I can't come back." And I said, "Well, it's normal. You're going to get sore." He's like, no, you don't understand. This is more sore than," like he wasn't injured, but he just hadn't probably felt that muscle soreness from training ever before. My fault again. This is in the first gym we had, when it was just basically me training people. And I think at that time it was a lot about smashing people. I thought that was the way to go, which we've obviously evolved and developed from. But no, you do get sore. Please keep moving. Don't wait another week to come for your second session, because then you're not gonna benefit from that.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I always say to new people when they sign up, is to expect to be sore, but keep coming. It does get easier. And probably key things to, even for existing members, is to realize soreness isn't an indicator either of how well you're training or anything along those lines. Like a lot of people will tend to think soreness means I've trained well, but it just means you've done something new more than anything. Well.
Exactly. It's just a different stimulus usually. So if you get sore when training regularly, it's either because you're not training frequently enough, right? This is how I look at it. So if you're only training 2 times a week, you're probably going to be sore after every session because it's too far in between sessions. 3, maybe. I always recommend people train at least 4 times a week, because then you can feel that I train more days of the week than I rest. If you do the other way around, you probably need to twist that around a little bit. But yeah, definitely, you never feel like if you're not sore that it didn't do anything for you, because that's not an indicator. The reason I was sore from Monday, for example, was because I hadn't done front squats, and I was gonna say heavy. They weren't that heavy, but it was the heaviest because we've been training at home, and I managed to get my barbell up and do a few front squats, and my glutes were killing me afterwards because I hadn't done that weight for a while. But yeah, it's not the indication of the better session always.
Yeah, definitely. So there was another story. I don't know if you remember this, but you told me it maybe 12 months back, and it's kind of something that I've taken on in my own transformation journey and how I look at nutrition a little bit. And it was the story of the M&M packet and eating one handful and throwing the rest out. Do you remember that story?
Mm.
You want to share that one? Because I found that really beneficial for me, and I think members would as well.
Well, that was my thing back in the day, right? Like I think I know the story you talk, but there's multiple times. Like this happened every day to me, basically, when I was working in IT. That there was temptation of eating things. It was like, I don't know if this was a show in Sweden or here. It was called Temptation Island, I think, and it wasn't about love. It was about eating things. For people who are overweight, a bit like Biggest Loser. No, actually, maybe it was Biggest Loser, and they had temptation. Yeah. Anyway, I used to in the office. Potentially was M&Ms I told you about, but it might have been more common that because there's always birthdays in the office, so people will give you cake and they give you cake. And I said, I'll have a little piece, but like a little sweet with my coffee. And this was not at the start when I was losing weight. At the start, I would say, no, I'm not touching it, right? That was when I was really disciplined. And then when you lose a bit of weight, you realize, hey, I got to the stage where I could eat a pizza and still feel the same, and you don't gain weight from eating bad one day. But what I would do would be, okay, they gave me a cake. It was always bigger than I wanted. So I would have a couple of bites and then I'd throw it out.
Yeah.
I'd ask if anyone wanted it, and obviously most of the time they didn't. I obviously didn't say, hey, eat from my spoon, but I'd go cut it up and I'll have my little piece and then there's rest. And usually people didn't say because they felt like they already had their piece. But I would just rather throw it out. Don't have to eat it all because it's there. And I know it might feel wasteful, etc. But there's no one that's going to benefit from you eating it, or it's sitting in your cupboard or going in the bin, right?
Yeah.
If no one else is not going to starve, or unless you're sending that food to someone, then but otherwise chuck it in the bin. If you have it in the house, you'll eat it. You will eat it. And that's yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like, I know that's something I've taken aboard in the last kind of 6 months since Christmas, really, which was just more portion control. And even if we went out for dinner and they served, you didn't have to eat everything they served you. You could just eat what you wanted to eat, which was something that I think has helped me, and I think will help a lot of people if they kind of do that and take that on board.
Definitely. And you've done it really good, but you don't have to go to the extremes, right? Like I did when I'd go to the pub still when I was in that like full mindset. I'd go to the pub and I'd order a Parma, right? I'd eat the Parma. I'd have like 5 chips and I'd leave the chips, which to me now, like I'd probably finish the chips like at this. You don't have to be that extreme, but you can choose to go a little bit less, or you can, but because it's not easy for everyone to sit there and have this chip smell in your face and not eat it, right? But probably better is to maybe go, well, no chips, please. If you want to do, you can still have the Parma, and then maybe just grab a couple of chips from your partner if they have chips.
Yeah.
Like it's just about trying to those things. You can really easily adjust it. Small changes, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's kind of what Big Five is built on, isn't it? Moderation and active, healthy lifestyle with still being able to have the beer and have the pizza.
For sure, yeah.
Big Five.
If someone wants to go as extreme as I did when I first started about 11 years ago, whatever it was, 12 years ago, they can, but it doesn't really work well for many people. Like I managed then, yeah, I'm heavier now. I've got more fat now than I did then, but I was just like too skinny for a while thereafter. And but if you can find a point where you still get to enjoy life, which is where I'm feeling I've been for years, like if I feel like I'm getting a little bit too heavy, I'm gonna say heavy rather than fat, but fat. If I feel like I'm gaining too much fat, I just adjust it a little bit for a while, and I can work. But it takes a little bit of time to get to that. And I'm not going to say like people are going to say, oh, but you don't even look fit or anything. That's fine. I don't really care about what people think, to be honest. I just it's just about what I feel. Because people might look at me and go, well, you don't look like a fitness professional. Well, I don't know. Doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. I'm feeling really fit. I'm feeling good about it, and I'm going to enjoy beer this hour probably in the sun.
Yeah, perfect. Healthy.
Yeah.
So last question, because we don't want this to go too long for people then. I think we can't do a podcast or a chat without asking it. We get it every month. Someone says, what's the Big Five stand for?
Hey. Well, to be honest, it has changed now, right? So I can't blame people for not knowing all of it. It's basically the same as it always has been. What I named the business on was, I stole it actually from someone. The actual idea of calling it Big Five, but it was what I considered the Big Five movements for best for fat loss. And it wasn't running. It was after my cardio period where I realized, hey, we need resistance training. So the Big Five: squat, push, pull, hinge, and sprint. And hinge we used to have there was total core, but it's sort of total core is everything we do. It's like engaging the core. So we changed it to a hinge because I believe that hinging, glute bridges and deadlifts or RDLs or whatever it might be is really beneficial to build strength. And then the sprint used to be, when I started, was like boot camp. We actually sprinted. Now, not so many people my age can just come in and do like flat ground sprints. So I actually, for that, I would normally recommend a hill sprint instead. It's a little bit easier on the joint, etc. But we call sprint something that just elevates your heart rate and gets you sweating. It could be the air bike we're using, the sled, battle ropes, yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's the Big Five.
Can we quickly just touch on that core? So why is core not included for people just to understand a little bit more? Like I know the reason, but let's just explain to other people why and how they can get their core in other lifts.
Oh, okay. So every move out of the fine, you will be using your core, unless it's like intentionally. Actually, I can't think of any exercise where your core shouldn't be involved. I can't really. Like even a flat bench,
Nothing.
legs up bench press where you're not engaging your core as much because your legs are not involved, you're still going to use your core to balance on that bench. Like everything. So squat, push, pull, everything will be like if you do a TRX row, you shouldn't sag your body. You should keep it straight. We're using your core and core is obviously, there's a lot of muscles and stuff in there, but let's just call it core. Same with the push-up. Like you can't do a push-up without engaging your core. A squat, we see this actually quite a bit with squats where people hinge almost in a squat. So this is their upper back. They go forward too much and you're probably not engaging your core enough then. So in that case, like a goblet squat is obviously really good to try and keep that up. But it's all about engaging. This is my spine, right? This is my core. But like you understand what I'm saying there. So, and people who who aren't watching, who's just listening to this, yeah, basically you want to be as upright as possible in the squat and trying to engage.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly right. Like there's no lift that I can think of at Big Five. Like there are probably some in some 24/7 commercial gyms where you might do a leg extension where you sit down. But at Big Five, we try and get everyone to engage the core every lift, don't we?
Yes, exactly. And
everyday core.
Everyday core. There's nothing wrong like those machine lifts like that's there's a place for that as well. Like I can I can see that now. There was years when I was like, nah, machines are useless. I'm not necessarily thinking that anymore. Each to their own. What people want to do, if they find that leg extensions at a big commercial gym is what they get them motivated, then by all means go for that, right?
Yeah.
Just don't stop resistance training ever, and don't get scared of getting bulky, girls, ladies, because that's another one, right? Resistance training doesn't make you bulky unless you eat too much.
Yeah. 100%. We could go on day on.
We can go on. We'll do another one, mate.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Zach.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Hopefully you got something out of that. You can always comment or give us some feedback if you want any like topics that interest you or you want to know a little bit more about as well. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, mate.